Do you suffer from asthma and wonder, are there any natural supplements, lifestyle changes that you can incorporate to relieve asthma symptoms? Hello, my successful and healthy earthlings. Mihaela Ragushia, naturopath and founder of the Natural Health Podcast. In this episode today, you will learn just what asthma is and the natural remedies for asthma. And at the end of this episode, I'm going to give you an opportunity to join a health and success-oriented community by clicking below and joining the Natural Health newsletter. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, where we bring awareness to sustainable health in the business hustle space. The Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for What Would I Do? In today's episode of Natural Health Podcast, we discuss this week's question. All questions are kept confidential. I read them and answer them as if it was me, hence why it's called What Would I Do? The information provided is not to be taken as advice and is solely for information purposes only. I'm not here to cure, treat, or provide medical advice. I'm here to educate and inform you so you're able to take steps towards optimal health. Please discuss any healthcare changes or medical issues with your healthcare professional. Let's get into today's question. Such an exciting one, right? Today's question comes from Anonymous, which most of them do because I keep this anonymous because it is health questions that individuals sometimes don't really want to share. But okay, the question goes, I am 25 and have had asthma since I was a kid. Lately, every time I play soccer, it gets worse. Is there anything I can do naturally to help me? What a great question. Good on you for playing soccer. I absolutely love soccer. But let's get into it and figure out what is asthma, right? A lot of individuals, especially here in Australia, it's so interesting because, I've come from overseas and most kids that were born in Australia have or had asthma as a kid, which is a little bit different, isn't it? Because around the kids that I never even saw a puffer. So the first time I was at primary school, I saw this kid puffing away and I was like, what is that? That looks kind of different, weird. And then I kind of figured out nearly everyone in my grade had asthma, right? So what is it, right? Asthma is a chronic inflammatory disorder of the airways in which many cells and cellular elements play a role, in particular mast cells, white blood cells, T lymphocytes, macrophages, neutrophils, epithelial cells, essentially all white blood cells, right? All different types of white blood cells. In susceptible individuals, this inflammation causes recurring episodes of wheezing, breathlessness, chest tightness and coughing, particularly at night or early in the morning. It depends on every individual, right? So essentially it's the episodes are usually associated with widespread but variable airflow obstruction that is often reversible either spontaneously or with treatment. The inflammation also causes an associated increase in the existent bronchial responsiveness to a variety of stimulus. Asthma symptoms are categorized by worse during sleep and may be intensified by emotion. How interesting is that, right? So typical signs and symptoms of someone who's got asthma: chest tightness, short breath, wheezing, coughing or wheezing attacks, also dealing with cold and flu, chest pains. And this could be due to, and I'm just going to go through them quickly because I could do a whole episode on asthma, is allergies, exercise, a workplace irritant. Another linking factor in the fact of majority of asthma is experiencing allergies. Around half of the adults with asthma have some type of allergies. As a result, reducing exposure to allergens is a key part of migrating asthma symptoms. Okay, let's get into the questions. Question number 1 is, when did your asthma start? So if you're an adult, did it start in your childhood or did it start when you moved houses, when you moved job? Try and figure out when it started, right? What triggered it then and what triggers your asthma now? Even emotions, chemicals, pets, people, the weather, what triggers it? Some people have said to me, you know what, when I go overseas, it gets so much better. When I come back to Australia, it gets worse. So what makes it worse and what makes it better? This is important for you to write down to understand your asthma. What is your current diet like? What do you eat? What's your current water intake like? Do you drink? Do you smoke? Are you surrounded by smoke? Do you have a role where you're involved in smoke? So for example, are you a firefighter? Do you work with hazards? Do you work in a factory? Are you a gardener? Do you work at a golf course? Anything along those lines where you may be exposed to chemicals or irritants, it's important to understand. Or have you ever worked in those roles before, working with cars and so forth? What's your current sleep like? Are you currently overweight? What medication are you on currently? What supplements are you on? Do you have any allergies? Have you been tested for any allergies? You in particular said you play soccer. Is this playing soccer? Is that in the cold? Are you playing soccer in the cold outside, or is it indoor soccer inside? Where have you worked before? Where do you currently work? Are you around chemicals, fumes, dusts? Does anyone in your household smoke? Are you surrounded by smoke? Ask yourself all of these questions, right? When you ask yourself those questions, then the question goes to, what would I do, right? What would I do is I'll take a deep breath. After I've figured all those things out, what would I do? I would first write down when my asthma got started, what triggered it, what makes it worse, what makes it better. I would do like an asthma diary if necessary for a month or two, just to figure out these things, to figure out the triggers. I would test myself for allergies. Absolutely important to test yourself for allergies, including food allergies. I would determine the triggers. This is a whole process. This is a whole process that I need to go through. I would go through a process of determining and working with a healthcare professional and figuring out my triggers and figuring out if I have allergies. Okay, the allergies may be to pollen, allergies may be to dogs or cats, allergies may be to some food, right? Figure this out. I would review my home and my work for triggers such as chemicals or dust or anything along those lines. Ensure that where I work, where I sleep, where I eat, where I am is free of dust, absolutely free of dust, which means having it clean. Where I'm working, make sure it's clean, but it's not cleaned with chemicals, it's cleaned naturally, right? Get a natural cleaner to come in. I would ensure that if I am undertaking any type of maintenance at work or there's painting or things going on, I stay away from that. Stay away from environmental toxins. That's what I would do 100%. I would lose some weight if I am overweight. I would reduce smoking or completely cut it out, and drinking also, because this can aggravate my asthma for the moment until we get things on point. I would reduce my exposure to pollutions, fumes, chemicals, such as used by hairdressers, factory workers, manufacturers, farmers, and the list goes on, painters. Essentially, what you need to understand is that asthma can be life-threatening. If you're experiencing a sudden worsening of asthma symptoms, you should seek immediate emergency. This is number one that I want you to know, is seek emergency ASAP if your symptoms get worse. The other thing that I would do is I would have an air filter at home. I would have an air filter at work, wherever I spend most of my time. I would ensure I have air filters in. Ensure I increase my omega-3 foods, right? I would review my diet with a healthcare professional and reduce that added sugar and reduce the other inflammatory foods, and ensure that my omega-3 is on point. Therefore, I would even get my omega-3 tested, run a blood test, see what your inflammation is at the moment, see if your white blood cells are increased at the moment and what is happening, right? And I could even go to the extent of ensuring my pillows, my mattress are allergy-free, the cleaning products I'm using are allergy-free, the laundry liquid is allergen-free. Use synthetic materials instead of animal products, because animal products might be triggering things like wool, horsehair and stuff like that, but then also synthetic materials may be triggering it. Figure that out. Essentially use environmentally friendly, allergen-free materials that I'm sleeping on, like sheets, pillows, mattresses, and so forth. I would minimize collecting dust in the household, make sure it's cleaned all the time. I'm talking about carpet, vacuumed. I would, even if I had carpets in the house, I would rip them out. There's no need for carpets. Shouldn't have carpets. Carpets just cause things to be worse. Or if you do have carpets, you need to change them, I think, every 7 years. I would even do it every 5 years. Absolutely crazy. Curtains, make sure these are changed. So many things. Air filter, I would have an air filter on 100%. Remove so reduce pro-inflammatory foods such as meats, dairy, refined foods, sugars, and even if you're sensitive to antibiotics, even choose your meats that are organic to avoid antibiotic residue. 100%. Avoid foods high in content of mold or leftovers, have fresh food and things like that. Essentially, there's so many things to do. Review my diet with a healthcare professional, make sure it's organic and fresh and green, lots of leafy greens and colors, rainbow diet. there you have it. I've given you so much information to start off with if you are suffering from asthma in regards to what I would do. I hope this sheds some light to your question, anyone listening who may have this issue. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at mihaela.raguse and I'll be more than happy to assist you. Maybe even feature your question on the Natural Health podcast. There you have it. And if you want to join a health and success oriented community, click below by joining the newsletter and you'll be sent an amazing newsletter on Friday every single week with loads of information. And remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health. Content and information provided here is opinion of Mihaela Raguse and is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mihaela Raguse does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. Under no circumstances shall the Natural Podcast, Mihaela Raguse, any guests or contributors to the Natural Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mihaela Raguse be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting your doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mihaela Raguse nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.